Well, hello, friends, and welcome to Soul Aligned 2025. This is your first encounter with me. I'm Trish Murray, and this is one of the resources that I share with my community, with my clients, to invite us to consider sort of this bigger picture of how we can move through 2025 with a greater degree of soul alignment and not being sort of blown about or distracted, if you will, by the many, many things that will go on in our world out there. This is a real invitation to come back inward and work with some of these themes that I'm going to share from numerology, astrology, and human design. Now, I'm going to do kind of a summary at the top, and then I'm going to come back on each of the modalities and do a little bit of a deeper dive. If you are watching this in the full segment, which is going to be available in my private Telegram channel, you can DM me if you want to learn more about that. But if you're watching the full segment, this is not going to go beyond about 30 minutes. And from a numerology perspective, I'm going to add kind of a note, a nerd note, if you will, at the end of the full segment where I talk about the Gregorian calendar and something that I noticed last year as I was working with some of these insights. So if you're kind of a nerd like me about this kind of stuff, you might want to hang out and watch that last piece because I'm going to talk about that differently. So top line, broad strokes. I'm going to look at the numerology, the astrology, and the human design pieces because not always for people have I found that one modality really resonates. What I've found more and more is that actually people are really resonating with, bits and pieces from all of these. And so it's one of the reasons why I choose to work from, three or four or five different kinds of modalities as opposed to zeroing in on one. And the way that I use it is very different than other people. So numerology. In 2025, we are working with what is referred to as a 9 year, and you get that by adding all the digits together, 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 5. And then you distill that down and into a single digit, which brings you 9. Overarching theme for a 9 year is about completion. It's about the end of a cycle. And so it might be helpful if you're testing, if you're going to be a bit of a scientist with this, to look back at what happened in 2016 for you. What might have started to kind of percolate for you? What seeds did you plant in 2016 that you are now seeing kind of come to a sense of fullness or completion, if you will? Now, it's not to say that something's going to come to an end, but it's more in terms of cycles. And if you think about this in terms of a spiral staircase, it's not even necessarily that something's going to come to an end, though it could come to an end that you're not going to go back to, but it's more about what's the next iteration, what's the next version. And if you know anything about human design or astrology or even numerology, you know that that's really the whole conversation is for us at a soul level. How are we moving up the staircase to our next level, right? Our next best version of ourselves. Okay, so that's generally speaking what a 9 year is all about. It's the end of a cycle, it's completion. You're looking at, what are you maybe going to let go of as you move forward next year. So what are you looking at this year? To consider what you're going to let go of as you move into a new cycle, which will be 2026. So the astrology, and this is really an amalgamation of a lot of the core resources that I listen to, people who are incredibly well versed. They have a deep, deep, deep well of understanding about astrology. And then I've influenced or taken my intuitive lens and put it over top of that and pulled forward the things that I feel are going to be most relevant, not only from the work that I do, but also from, the perspective of my end game, which is being a strategic soulpreneur. So again, listening to some of those core resources, there was a really distinct parallel with this 9 year. Now, endings and beginnings, endings and beginnings. And what I think is really in the background of that is number one, a lot of the astrologers are pointing to the fact that the outer planets are going to move into new signs. When that happens, we can expect change. We can expect things that have been to sort of come to completion, come to an end, because there's a new energy coming forward with those planets as they move into those signs. But those same planets, some of those same planets are going through retrogrades this year, which will end up pulling them back into the sign that they're in right now. And so we've got this kind of pull push, this kind of endings, beginnings, moving forward, moving backward, kind of moving forward, coming back to revisit sort of some of the themes that were associated to the planets and the signs that they're in right now and where they're ultimately going to be moving into. One of the other things that came forward very strongly was we are going to see an even more profound level of revelation. And if you know me at all, you know that I am quietly cheering this truth tsunami, as one of my ladies talked about it. Um, she described it as a tsunami of truth coming forward from about November and then all the way into 2025. I am personally pretty excited about that because I think that that's what's going to move the energy through the collective so that we can start making our way forward into this quote new age, which I talk about on my podcast all the time. So that's a little bit of the top line stuff, right? Endings, beginnings being reinforced, retrogrades moving into new signs, new energy coming forward, truth, revelation. I think that personally, and I'll talk a little bit more about this when I do the sort of the detailed conversation. Um, but let's move into human design. Human design, I